Owners of the land on which we meet, which are the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and to pay our respects to their elders past and present. I also want to remind people that tonight the meeting is recorded and it's also uploaded to the internet and live streamed, so any of the debate but also questions and comments by members of the public will be publicly available online, so just make sure that you're aware of that. So item 2 on the agenda is public question time. This is the opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council. If you have a question, I'd ask you to raise your hand and I'll invite you to the microphone to ask your question. Please, Mr. Jacobson. So please state your name and your address for the record.
Nonnie Jacobson, Barton Parade, Bassendean. I'm just going to ask a question regarding item 10.9. I'm sorry, there's a little bit of preamble here. It's about the Surrey Street redevelopment, for want of a better word, and it's quoted in the agenda: the residency's primacy of use is for interpretation, including passive use of spaces for compatible purpose. Interpretation doesn't mean simply using the space to house information panels and artefacts. Accurate restoration of the buildings, particularly those aspects that are visible from the street, that's integral to authentic interpretation. The visitor experience, so for people who come and actually visit the place, not just the building but the whole place, that's what defines whether or not that project has been successful as an interpretation. I'm urging the councillors to ensure that the plans which form part of the building works contract be as historically authentic as feasible. To that end, I'd request that special attention be paid to the front veranda details of the residency, using the available photographic records as reference, and also pay attention to restoring the verge overhang to the roofline of the pensioner guard cottage itself, which at some point was removed and that eave overhang was taken away. That's actually a pretty important part of the building in order to protect the walls of it. And it's imperative that these details are defined precisely within the scope of the works prior to this project going out to tender, so that whoever tenders on it actually knows what they're going to be building. To modify any of this stuff afterwards actually will cost considerably more than if it's done right the first time. You get cost overruns. If you have to do a variation to a contract, then there's always a surcharge involved. So I'm just hoping that the councillors make sure that whatever plans go out to tender are as accurate as possible.
So your question is just asking us to
consider that? Are you going to do that? Are you guys going to, yeah.
Well, the items on the agenda, when we get to that, I'm sure there'll be some questions and conversation.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Oh, sorry. Yes, Mr. Veal. So, Mr. Veal, before you ask your question, I just made a note that at the last meeting your question was taken on notice. It's been recorded in the agenda. I'm not sure whether you've had a chance to read that, but I believe there was an update at the EMRC last week about the flood studies. Is there any further information that we can provide Mr. Veal in addition to the information in the agenda?
Sure. So just a further update from the MRC. The official launch did take place of the understanding of flood study, and stages 1, 2 and 3 were released, and the MRC is progressing with stages 4 and 5 and are hoping to receive a grant to achieve that. But at this stage the 1% average exceedance probability height, flood heights data has now been released and uploaded onto the town's website. So we now have the up-to-date 1%, or the old 1 in 100 year flood height data on our website.
And the maps?
So that's the map for the 1 in 100, and the Department for Waters are progressively building up their other flood height maps, and we'll be releasing them progressively.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not in the form of a question. I just wanted to thank Graham for his phone call, which was pretty rapid, and I am aware of some of the follow-up stuff, so thanks very much for that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Veal. Further questions? Sorry, I don't know your name.
Justin Hughes.
Come through.
And we've got Dave Beach with the from the Bassendean Eastern Regional RSL.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'd like to say thank Bob for Vietnam Veteran Day. I thought it was quite good for the council supporting us that day. And we just wanted to, I suppose, introduce ourselves. Like, so I got elected in our annual general meeting as the Deputy Vice President. And obviously, we want to be quite proactive with the council. Like, I live in Reed Street. And so, yeah, so I think Dave wanted to have a go or something.
And sorry, what was your name, Dave?
Hi, my name's David Beecham, and I'm from the Bassendean RSL, or the Eastern Regional RSL sub-branch. And my question is, what has progressed with the council in regards to Remembrance Day in 2018, or whether anything has been planned at this point in time?
Would you like to answer that, Mr. CEO?
Look, my PA who organises the celebrations has only just returned from a holiday to Europe.
So that's a no?
I can find out for you tomorrow. I'm sure she's a long-term planner. I'm sure things have been put in place. So I'll talk to her tomorrow and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Question.
Thank you.
So
And
I suppose outside of that, we
Certainly it will happen.
Yeah.
Look, I know it's going to happen, and the last thing that I heard about was that it was going to be planned to be done on a Friday.
Right.
But Remembrance Day is on a Sunday, and
Yes.
the last I spoke to anybody about it, we were going to be the organiser,
Yes.
with the support of the council.
I believe that's
then-
still the case. I believe it's still planned to be on the Sunday.
Yeah. Since then, I haven't heard anything,
Well,
and we need to make sure that we're focused, because it's 100 years since the end of the First World War.
Yeah.
Sure.
We would like to make this a large commemoration, and we would like to know where the council are at, and I'm sure the council would like to know where we're at, so that when it does get put together,
sure.
the several hundred people that we hope to attend will get quite a good organised day.
Yeah, thank you. Last year, you're right, it was on the weekend as well, and the town assisted the RSL to put on the event, but I'm sure if the CEO speaks to Sue Perkins tomorrow, we can get some clarification about where it's at, but thank you for the reminder.
Just might like to make a comment though. Although we do the organising, that's only because the Eastern Region branch has been unable to do so in the past.
Yes, in the last 3 years, you may have noticed, and other people may have noticed, that has changed.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that. We would be delighted to have a greater involvement in the organisation. At the moment, the council, for quite a number of years, has met the cost of organising and running the celebration.
Yes, we don't want you to stop meeting the costs.
No.
Just because we want to be involved, we don't want you to stop spending money.
But I just letting you know that we would be delighted to have you involved. It is a big chore. Particularly the Anzac Day one, is quite an involved exercise in getting everything done. So I would welcome your involvement, and I'm sure Sue would like to get some support as well.
I'm sure some of you noticed that not this one necessarily, but the Anzac Day before, we actually had a few members of Parliament and the members of the council actually come out to the club and have a look at how it's progressed. I know some of you hadn't been there for many years, but they went from an attendance rate of about 30 or 40 people after an Anzac Day that were not part of the organising, to 150 to 200 people now going through that weren't part of organising the day. So the growth of our club is massive, and we want to make sure that we're involved with the council, with the organising of all things military, not just Anzac Day and Remembrance Day.
Thank you. We really appreciate the offer, and thanks for coming and introducing yourself as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Yates?
Thank you. Nothing like being height challenged. Don Yates, 10 Thompson Road, Success Hill. Does the council and the staff appreciate that questions by the community have really four aspects? They have a inquiry aspect to find out information. They also have at times an entertainment aspect, but also the part of the questioning is also to inquire and examine the staff to see whether they actually have a knowledge that's actually commensurate or is required by a Bassendean community. And just it concerns me that questions have to be asked multiple times. When the Minister for Local Government says that the staff and the council should answer these questions. Now, what that does, if you come back to the ease again of inquiry and examination, it just suggests that some of the staff and some of the councillors, don't know the answers, and the community is really just trying to test the staff and the councillors to see whether they actually have that education that they require. Do you accept that?
Mr. Yates, you'd be very aware that you ask us a lot of questions. Probably, I would say, the rest of the community combined wouldn't ask as many questions as you do. And I think it's quite unfair to suggest that you don't get responses from councillors and staff. I can very confidently say that I've spent more time responding to you than any other member of the community, and I would agree that staff have probably done the same thing. And we attempt to answer the questions that you ask as thoroughly as possible, and this is very time consuming. However, when questions are asked multiple times and the same answer will be given, it is a waste of our ratepayers' money for the staff to continue answering them. So I do understand questions are important. We encourage our community to ask questions. We try and answer those questions as accurately and informatively as we can. However, there's a limit to the amount that we are able to give to small portions of the community in an effort to make sure that we serve the whole community as best we can.
On any one particular week, do you recognise that I would actually have multiple people talk to me at the shopping centre, at my front door, in the street, asking me to ask the questions because they don't have...
Mr. Yates, can I ask you in that case to encourage those individuals to ask us the questions directly themselves? As you can appreciate, each of us also has many individuals and groups come and ask us questions each week, and we're very happy to respond, but it would be better if people came to us directly than going through you, so the information can be given directly to the people who want to know the answers.
It's my understanding that at the moment there is no community customer charter for the general public.
Yep, so this is your last question, so I will answer that. We did previously have a customer charter. That customer charter wasn't serving us as fully as we needed it to. So we have scheduled a workshop for councillors to re-examine that so we can come up with a more effective charter so that we can serve our community as effectively as possible. So thank you, Mr. Yates. That's all
I'll have one final question about
No, Mr. Yates, you've had your three. Please sit down.
All right, the question is...
Mr. Yates, I've said that. Let somebody else have an opportunity. Thank you.
I find that unacceptable because
Mr. Yates,
a question
standing
like,
orders
for example...
say 3 questions. Please sit down. If there's an opportunity, I'll give you another chance to stand up and ask your 4th question.
Disappointing.
Are there any further questions? Mrs. Jacobson.
Hi, Nonnie Jacobson's Barton Parade, Bassendean. Can I ask 2 in a row, just so that
yes,
I
you
get
can.
them out of the row? One's about item 10.2, which is regarding a non-compliant front boundary fence treatment. I actually agree with the officer recommendation in this case. There was recently a quite serious road accident not far from
Ms.
that.
Jacobson, sorry, is there a question related to this?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Not far from that actual location, and I was wondering if the council might consider not just enforcing the fencing as it should be, but also considering whether having no parking zones on the actual street and the road verges in that vicinity might be looked into, because there are some actual vehicle sightline issues with the intersection of West Road and Watson Street, particularly because West Road does a little bit of a kink there and Watson Street has a bit of a crest. And for people who regularly use it, they're used to that. They understand, so they drive really cautiously through that area. But for people who are unfamiliar with the lie of the land and so on, it might actually be helpful if there was no vehicle parking allowed on the verges that obstructs the view of oncoming traffic.
Okay, we'll speak to the staff when we get to that item.
And the other question, which is a bit abstract, is about the item 10.7, the Sandy Beach Reserve toilets. It's obvious reading all of that sewage is a real expensive thing. Has there been any consideration of installing a dry composting toilet facility at that location?
Are you able to answer that, Mr. Stewart-Dawkins?
The staff have investigated the treatment that they think is the most appropriate, so that's what's in recommended. So the other thing is that the report actually outlines that the water table is relatively high, and so that's why there's having to be a mounded receptacle for the storage of that, and then it's pumped out from there on a as required basis.
Okay. So I think sounds like it hasn't
sounds
been
like the answer
considered.
is no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Veal?
Yeah, Ian Veal, 33 Bassendean Parade. Look, just in the agenda, the agenda under the council minutes, it says a formal launch of the flood study reports planned for later in September. September's nearly over. Have you got a date for that?
I think that's what Mr. Haggart was referring to, that the launch with the MRC was held last week.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Mr. Yates?
Just a couple of quick questions, if I may. Last Friday, there was a JDAP hearing related to the Aegis health facility in Old Perth Road. Why was it listed as a town centre zoning and not an RAC3 zoning, as per September last year?
Mr. Reid?
The zoning of the land is town centre. So that's the zoning. The RAC3 is the default density code for residential development within the town centre.
Thank you. And your subsequent question?
Yes, I guess related to some of the JDAP decisions being made recently, is this council aware that there is a Supreme Court judicial review pending, which is the same as a writ of mandamus, because of decisions made by this council is unacceptable. Things like, for example, the number of car parking bays at the shopping centre. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll close public question time. Now there's the opportunity for addresses by members of the public on items on the agenda. So once again, if you have a comment you'd like to make on a particular item for council to consider, I'd ask you to raise your hand, state your name and the item number and make your comment. Is there anybody who would like to address council? Okay, moving on then. Item 3, attendances, apologies and applications for leave of absence. So we've got an apology from Tony Dowling, who's on annual leave. I would like to request a leave of absence from September 27th to the 12th of October. Are there any further requests? Councillor Mikachuk?
Yeah, I'd like to request a leave of absence from the 5th to the 9th of November and apologise in advance. I believe there's an audit committee meeting in there. No?
Councillor Brown?
Yeah, request leave of absence from the 18th to the 21st of October, please.
18th to 21st. Sorry, had you finished, Councillor Mikachuk?
Oh, yes.
Yep. Okay. Do we have a mover for the leaves of absence? Councillor Quinton, seconder. Councillor Hamilton, all those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Item 4 is deputations. I don't believe there have been any requests. Item 5, confirmation of the minutes. So we have a mover for 5.1a that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting in August be received. Councillor Mikachuk, seconded. Councillor McLennan, all those in favour? It's passed unanimously. 51b, that they're an accurate record of the meeting, moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded Councillor Mikachuk, all those in favour? That's passed unanimously. I have no announcements. I don't believe there are any petitions. Are there any declarations of interest for items on tonight's agenda?
I have a declaration of interest for item 12.2.
So I think that's actually 13.2 that have been mislabeled.
Oh, sorry, just 13.2.
I think it's 13.3 that you actually have an interest in.
I declare an interest in both.
Okay.
But I won't be in the room anyway.
Any further interests? Okay, there was no business from the previous meeting, so we'll move on to item 10, which is reports. So these are the items I've currently got coming out of en bloc. 10.2, 10.4, 10.5, 10.6, 10.7, 10.9, 10.10, 10.11, 10.12, 1013, 1014, 1015, 1016, 1017, 1020, 1025, 1026, 11.1, and then 13.1, 13.2, 13.3, which are all labelled currently as 12.1, 12.2, 12.3. Are there any further items, Councillor Hamilton?
10.8.
The water fountain audit?
Yep.
Yep.
And 10.22.
The accounts for payment?
10.11.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Anything further? Okay, in that case, can I have a mover for the rest of the items to be passed on block? Councillor Mikachuk, seconded Councillor Brown. All those in favour? And that is passed unanimously. So item 10.2, the retrospective fence approval. Are there any questions for the officers? Yep. Councillor Mikachuk?
Yeah, I do believe I came across in the report some mention of consideration about safety. Could officer just provide clarity in regards to, is the fence any impediment to sight lines?
Yeah. I think there were two issues there.
Yep.
I would say that the fence, there's no impediment to sightlines. There's a recommendation about increasing the permeability in the fence. I think the Nonny was asking whether or not there could be some kind of an audit or looking at no parking signs within the general area.
So can I just follow up from that question? Are you aware whether there's actually been any studies done on that area in recent times in regards to sight lines or safety issues?
No, I'm not, but I can make some inquiries tomorrow to find out whether there's been any assessment and provide that information to Council. It has been.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
Through the chair, could the officers please advise what our legal position is in the future should the neighbour who has not made comment or any response to, I think we did a letter to them or something, is there any legal implications to us if we allow the resident to retain the fence line, the side fence lines as they are?
The short answer is no. When we write to the adjoining owners, we advise them that there's 21 days to make a comment, and if no comment is made, that the council or the local government will go ahead and determine the application on its merits.
Councillor Brown?
Just to confirm, you say there is no sightline issues with that property. My understanding is the setback is beyond the required setback. Is that right?
I suppose in terms of sightlines, there's a verge in front of the property, but the fence is on the front lot boundary. It's permeable within the front, but not the sides.
That was my understanding. I did visit the site. Thank you.
So just in relation to the query about general sightline issues, not specific to this property, but to that area, are we able, I know Mr Stuart Dawkins, you said you'd follow up and make inquiries tomorrow. Is it possible to get the staff to have a look at it either way to...
Sorry, I was looking at the West Road,
so
Watson Street intersection
that's what
treatment.
I'm talking about. Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
and you'd like me to?
So you said you'd follow up whether any studies have been done.
Yes.
If they haven't, is it possible to get to have a look at
Yes,
that? Yep.
that's fine.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, so in the officer's report, they've presented two options. The officer recommendation is actually supportive of the second option, but I would like to move an alternative motion where we're supporting option 1, which requires the owners of the property to only modify the fence on the southern boundary, which they've agreed to, but doesn't require removing of the solid fence in the north part of the boundary. So do councillors have a copy of the proposal? Would anyone like it read out? Councillor Hamilton?
Given that you've asked the officers to investigate that intersection, is it possible to perhaps move your alternative motion, but with the subsequent section to hold off on that and pending the report coming back from the officers at the next OCM, or is that too difficult?
I'm not entirely sure what you're specifically asking.
Okay, well, you've asked the officers to check into, whether there's been any sightline issues on that corner. So obviously the resident has agreed to modify the southern side fence. So I have no problems with that. But the northern side fence, if it does come back with the officer saying that there is a problem, and we then delete that.
I hear what you're saying. Can I just, because I heard Mr. Reid say that there weren't really any sightline issues associated with this fence. It's more sightline issues potentially with that road and intersection independent of this property.
That's right.
Yep.
There's two independent thoughts there.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm moving it with option 1. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Brown. Is there anybody against? All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Okay, item 10.4. This is the possible improvement plan for Morley Drive East. This wasn't at the briefings. Are there any questions for the staff? Councillor Wilson.
Subsequent to the report being produced, have we heard anything further from the owners of the property?
Only from the planning consultant, who's aware that this is coming to council tonight, and they're still hopeful of pressing on with the meeting in early October.
And have they given any updated reasons why they weren't able to meet our original timeline?
Nothing updated other than that I'm not sure if this was in the original report. The directors of the company have been overseas and they wanted to make further changes to the concept plan before it was presented to the town.
Further questions? Okay, so we've got an officer recommendation. Do we have someone who'd like to move that? Councillor Quinton, is there a seconder?
Are we moving?
So the officer recommendation is currently that unless a concept plan is submitted, we are going to progress with the... Yes? So you're seconding? So we've got Councillor Quinton moving, Councillor Hamilton seconded. Is there anybody against? Councillor Gangel, would you like to open debate, Councillor Quinton?
I think that we have before us something that is decades old. We've got a group of people who are holding back the development of a block of land. We have asked them repeatedly to come to us with a concept plan, which is also a legal requirement in order for us to sell them our block of land. I'm happy for them to come to us in October with that concept plan. Otherwise, it's time for us to move on. It's time for our community to move on and develop the site.
Councillor Hamilton.
Okay. Truthfully, I don't have much patience for this particular group. However, looking at the officer's recommendation, it's 8 more business days. So I guess we can wait 8 more business days, but at the next council meeting, if there has been nothing presented in 8 more business days, I would assume that the officers would return a report at the very next OCM. Would that be correct? I hope so.
I gather so.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Gangel, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Look, in relation to this item, I believe we should look at covering all options. As has been stated, this is a long-term issue for the town. In fact, going back when I first got elected to the town, I think Mayor Klein, Tina Klein was mayor back then. The town did endeavour to reclassify the zoning of the land. However, that was subsequently knocked back by the planning minister of the day. I don't see any urgency from a town perspective in this, other than we would absolutely love to see that block utilised. But I don't think we should. I don't think the appropriate recommendation is to simply give it 8 more days, as Councillor Hamilton has said. I think the town can certainly inquire if there's still interest in that block being developed for the benefit of the community. I think the town should absolutely be encouraging that. and not have a closed door approach, and that's why I won't be supporting the officer recommendation. Thank you.
I'd like to speak for this motion. I actually asked the staff to include this on the agenda, seeing as the owners of the property had not responded in the time that we'd given them. I think they need to know that we're serious in taking some action. As Councillor Gangel said, this has been a long-term issue. We're talking 10 plus years. The people in that community want to see something happening on that site. It's derelict, it is detrimental to the community there. Back in February, we decided to take some stronger action, and we talked about implementing an improvement plan, to which the owners decided that they would come to the party and present us with a concept plan. So we have given them some time to do that, yet they are still pushing the limit and have not presented anything. So I think we need to continue to show that we are serious. If we back down now, then we are no better off than we were previously. If they don't decide to present us with a concept plan that is acceptable to us in the community, then I think we do need to take some stronger action and revert back to our February resolution, where we said we were going to take this to the state government and ask for an improvement plan for that site. So I would encourage all of you to vote in favour of the officer recommendation. Councillor Mikachuk.
Yeah.
Sorry, Your Worship, I've got a question there.
Yes.
Can we not have that incorporated into the recommendation?
That is the recommendation, because the default position...
No, that we'll take this to the state government.
So the default position back from, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Reid,
oh, sorry. So option number 2.
Yeah.
But you've gone for the officer recommendation.
Yep.
So I would have thought option 2 would have been.
That's immediately.
You know, but can we put point 2 of option 2?
Yeah.
Other than the words immediately, as part of the recommendation?
So I think you're proposing an alternative motion, is that correct? So are you...
I'm asking whether or not you would be happy, Your Worship, to incorporate point 2 in there.
So from what I just said, I
Yes.
think you're clear that I am very happy for us to pursue the improvement plan.
Yes.
I think the officer's recommendation to allow them to the first week of October is reasonable, but
Yes.
beyond that, reverting back to our previous resolution of seeking an improvement plan would be my preference.
Yes, but that's what I'm asking,
Yep.
Your Worship. I'll foreshadow putting point 2
Okay, so
and
just
3
let me,
as part of the
read it so I'm clear on what you're suggesting.
Yep. So option 2, points 2 and 3, to incorporate them into the officer recommendation here, which I think is basically what you were saying.
So you want to leave the officer recommendation as it is,
yes.
and add in point 2 and 3 of option 2, but remove the word immediately.
Well, that's right. So point 2
Yep.
would actually read, at which time
Yep.
council requests that the chief executive officer proceed immediately with actions, blah blah blah.
Yep. So let's just, for a minute, vote on this and then start it again if everyone's happy
Does
with
that
that.
mean that I don't speak?
If you would like to speak, you can. Hold on. So we've just got an alternative motion here. Let's put that to the side. We'll finish off for this one. So Councillor Mikachuk, if you'd like to speak on the current officer recommendation as opposed to what we've just foreshadowed, please speak now.
Thank you. Only just very briefly to clarify my position. I did put my hand up and say I was opposed to the proposal, and that's because I share Councillor Hamilton's view that, well, even extending it to October, it's been extended a lot, but given it's just a short period of time, I'm amenable to waiting for that. I just wanted to clarify that so it was clear. The other bit I'd like to ask now is a point of clarity. Should we get to the 8th of October, revert to our original resolution and therefore include what Councillor Gangel is proposing? So therefore is it...
But that's
not
my understanding,
necessary?
but it may provide some clarity. Mr. Reid, are you able to confirm either way?
So I suppose the notion is that it's the officer recommendation plus with bits 2 and 3.
So Councillor Mikachuk's question was, even if we didn't add in points 2 and 3, then we would automatically revert to our previous resolution to pursue an improvement plan. Yeah, and that's why I was supportive of the officer recommendation as it's written.
Yeah.
Councillor Hamilton.
May I inquire then if with the officer's recommendation that we shouldn't be putting in a specific date in October, like say the 5th of October, because that's the end of the first week in October. or not? Because it says by the first week in October.
If you would like there to be a specific date in there, that's fine, whatever the last day is.
Only if everybody's amenable to that.
I think it adds clarity.
What's the final date
Definitive.
in October? Okay. Let's vote on this and then look at the foreshadowed motion with the inclusion of the date and points 2 and 3. So we've got a mover and a seconder. We've got people against. Let's just put it to the vote. All those in favour? Okay.
Hang on.
Sorry,
What are we doing?
All
We've
right.
just messed up.
We've got the officer recommendation and we've got what Councillor Gangel had proposed,
Yeah, after
adding
which
in
time, yes.
points 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So if you vote for the officer recommendation at this point, we're not adding in points 2 and 3. So all those in favour?
Hang on.
Does the officer's recommendation have that
No.
specific date in there?
No.
Okay.
All those in favour?
Yeah.
Councillor Mikachuk. All those against? Councillor McLennan, Wilson, Gangel, Hamilton, Quinton and Brown. That's okay, then they change their mind.
Oh, they can do that.
Yeah, they can change their mind. Okay, so now, okay everybody, now we have got the foreshadowed motion, which is the officer recommendation with the date of the last Friday of October.
No, I meant the first.
Sorry.
First Friday of
First Friday of October. The 5th of October.
I'm not that generous.
Hold on. With points 2 and 3 of option 2, removing the word immediately.
Sorry, but point 2 should start with, after which time council requests that the Chief Executive Officer proceed with actions required to have such, etc., and then point 3 as is.
Oh, this is very confusing. How are you going there, Amy?
I think I was confused.
That's very clear.
What do you need clarified?
Sorry, can I?
Like, it's so confusing.
Yes, thank you, Worship. So what I'm proposing...
If everybody be quiet, just let Councillor Gangel speak, it's not confusing.
For the benefit of the Minutes Clerk and fellow councillors, what I'm proposing is the officer recommendation as it currently states, as it currently stands, but with in the first week of October, ending the 5th of October 2018. So the 5th of October, ending in the 5th of October 2018. And then point 2 being after which time Council requests that the Chief Executive Officer proceed with actions required to have an improvement plan prepared for lots 4 and 5, numbers 246 and 248 Morley Drive East, Eden Hill, pursuant to the provisions contained within Part 8 of the Planning and Development Act 2005, and 3, officers present a further report detailing proposed actions to be undertaken in conjunction with the initiation of an improvement plan for the land in question and remediation works required to be undertaken for Lot 5 for Council's consideration.
Okay.
And just for later in the evening, if I could ask the Minutes Clerk to speak a little bit slower, I suggest. Did you get that? For me, I just want to make sure when I outline future motions that I'm not speaking too fast.
Okay, moved
Wonderful,
Councillor
thank you.
Gangel, seconded Councillor McLennan. Is there anyone against? All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Okay, item 10.5, Success Road resurfacing. Are there questions? Okay, do we have a mover for the officer recommendation? Councillor Quinton, seconded Councillor Hamilton. Is there anyone against? All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. 10.6, Safe Active Street for Whitfield. Councillor Wilson, I believe you had some questions. No? No questions? Anybody else have questions for the staff? Okay, I had an amendment to propose to the officer recommendation. So at this point we have point 1 and 2. I would like to propose moving the officer recommendation, adding a third point in, which is and 3, request a presentation from Flight prior to detailed drawings be prepared to outline plans to incorporate community feedback and concerns into the final design. Are there any questions? Okay, so I've moved that with the amendment. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mikachuk. Anybody against? Councillor Wilson. So I'll open the debate. This project is something that has been in the making for quite some time. Earlier in the year, there was some extensive consultation done with the community, and I must say I was extremely impressed with the consultants who were involved in this process, not only in the way that they communicated with staff and councillors, but also the way that they communicated with the community and took on board the feedback that was given. I know there are some concerns by some members of the community and some councillors about this project in its entirety. However, we're at the point now where the concept design has been prepared and it's being finalised for the detailed design drawings. All I'm proposing at this point is that before that process occurs, that we sit down with the consultant and ensure that the feedback that the community and councillors have given is included into the detailed designs before making any further decisions about how to proceed with this project. There's been a lot of investment in this project already at this stage. The state government has invested a lot of money. I think it is the responsible thing for us to do, to pause at this point, make sure that the design is meeting the community's needs prior to investing any further. And it would also be inopportune to pause completely or to stop the project at this point before knowing what the detailed design is going to include. It may be that the concerns that community members and councillors have been addressed, in which case it would be a real shame not to proceed with a project that potentially is going to bring great benefits to the community. Councillor Mikachuk, did you wish to speak? Was it you who seconded?
No.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I rise to speak against this motion, not in opposition to the exact form of the words that you're put forward, but just to continue my opposition to the project. Not because I'm against cycling, but because I believe that this is the right project in the wrong location. On Thursday morning at 9 AM, I went for a drive along Whitford Street and did a survey of parking just on the east side of the road in the first 3 blocks between the train line heading south to the cul-de-sac that's there, and I noticed that there were 60 cars parked just on the east side of the road alone in those first 3 blocks. The drawings as presented here, and I accept that that might be subject to change following the workshop, which I'm sure will be voted for by the rest of council, proposes to remove some 7 parking bays just out of one small section alone next to the 8 Napkins hamburger restaurant. My concerns are more about what happens to the project as you continue towards the Bassendean Primary School, where I do not see how this project can accommodate the existing parking load. As I've said in the previous debate, I think West Road would be a very good location for this project. I think Hamilton Street would be a very good location for this project. But as I've stated previously, this is not the right street to be doing this project on.
Are there further speakers? Councillor Gandrel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, I'm speaking in favour of this motion. This is a project that has been long in fruition for quite a number of years now. We've gone through quite extensive community consultation to get to the stages that we're currently at. The state government has contributed to this project. That my understanding is the construction won't actually cost the town. It'll actually be funded by the state government. Sensational, fantastic. But it is a constant theme of difficulties sometimes in getting things done within the town. If you ask me, the best place for, I'm not sure what they're calling it this day and age, they keep changing it, but a smart street.
Safe Active Street.
Safe Active Street this month. It will change next month, no doubt. Safe Active Street is in fact the town centre. The town centre is where you want to encourage movement by anything other than car. Town centre is where you want bicycles. Town centre is where you want activity with people walking around. Town centre is where you want the density increase, and a town centre is exactly where you want to encourage people to do away with their cars and actually walk to the shops and get an active lifestyle. This is a fantastic initiative. I fully endorse it. I think it will be wonderful for the town, and sometimes it's simply a fact of build it and you'll actually discover what a benefit and what an attraction it actually will be for the town. Thank you.
Anyone further? Okay, so I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Gandrel, Mikachuk. Is that you, Hamilton? Councillor Hamilton? Yep. Quinton, Brown and McLennan, and against Councillor Wilson. So that is passed. Item 10.7, Sandy Beach Reserve Toilet Facilities. any questions to begin with? Councillor Hamilton?
Yes, through the Chair, I have some questions for the staff. I note that this system that you're recommending, it doesn't say anywhere in any of the blurb that I've read about how it interacts with a high water table. We know that that area has a really high water table. I think it's about 1 metre under normal ground level. Is that about right? So I can't see anywhere in the documentation in the attachments anything that tells me whether that system works well in that circumstance. And the second question I've got is, I note that the system has a venting where the layout is, it's got vents, which I didn't actually notice that at the briefing. It was only when I went back through the documents. And I also noticed that it says that the system works better on a slight slope rather than on flat ground. So all these things are interesting given that it's a very flat area. So I'm wondering how the staff are, whether those sort of things have actually been taken into consideration with their site location and things like that.
Through the chair. Yes, it's at this stage it's very preliminary in regards to the information which we've obtained. The report does outline that we need to get a number of approvals before we can proceed, and as part of that approval process we need to provide them with some designs, so that the topography of the land, give them information about the water table, all the issues that you've spoken about. So the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions, the Department of Health and the Department of Planning all need to provide their input in regards to this proposal, and will be providing recommendations to us as to how we can move forward. So some of these issues that you're questioning us about will be resolved as part of the planning processes.
So just in regards to Councillor Hamilton's question about the high water table, though, from my discussions with Mr Cardy, my understanding was that this particular treatment method had been selected for council endorsement because of the fact of the location being a high water table, because many of the other options were prohibited in that location.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Okay, supplementary question. When you're talking about the planning, I'm assuming, my personal feeling is that we should be doing this coordinated with the Sandy Beach Nature Play area. So I'm not entirely sure why this has come to us separately from the play space, because obviously the previous council resolution was that they wanted we wanted the toilets on the same side as the playground. So I would have thought that in the planning process it would have been a coordinated plan with the toilets and the playground, whereas this is just a separate standalone.
Yes, look, I wasn't at the August meeting, but I recall that the resolution was something like that they wanted a report to come back this month for consideration. So that's why this report's come back. I'd have to look at the full details of the report. Maybe Mr Haggett could may recall.
In terms of the playground, we are master planning, a concept master plan for Sandy Beach Reserve, and that process is underway now. The location of the toilet at the conclusion of that process will be within the master plan. So I believe that the intent is an indicative site location at this time, but to incorporate the outcome of the concept master plan process.
If I can just add to that, my understanding was that we're in the process of seeking approvals for various design elements of the playground, so it would make sense for us to also seek clarification around the toilet, whatever it's technology that we're using at the same time as we're going through the playground approvals process. Would that be fair? Councillor Hamilton?
In that case, with point 2, could I actually ask for a one-word change in point 2?
So can I just clarify, are you referring to the officer recommendation or the amended motion that I circulated?
Point 2 is the same in both, I think.
Yep. So
same.
Just before you do that, so councils would have also received an amendment that I circulated. So maybe Councillor Hamilton, I can move the amendment and then you can make your change to that if you're happy.
Yep.
So the amended motion that I was proposing was the officer recommendation as written up until point 3, at the end of which I would like to add, and which include baby change facilities, unisex cubicles and an outdoor shower. And 4, gives consideration to the toilet block being the canvas of a community/public art project. And Councillor Hamilton, what were you wanting to add in?
Okay, so point 2, I was going to suggest that we delete final location and put tentative location, because if it's going to be part and parcel of the planning, it's not the final location.
Sure. Does
And
that
I
cause a
also
problem for
have
the staff at all? No?
No. I also have a question in respect to your suggested amendment.
So could I just clarify before we talk about that, are you seconding it at the moment or not? Just ask you a question. So ask the question, it's fine.
Okay, sorry. If there is an outdoor shower included in this, could we ensure that it is one that's sensor operated, because we don't want people turning on water and leaving it on go all night?
The answer was yes, and I sought advice from Mr. Cardi today, and he said the addition of a shower of that nature is about $200. So.
Yep.
Okay, so I've moved it. Have you seconded it with that amendment? No?
I'll second it.
Oh, sorry, question?
Thank you. So some discussion was had previously about having a chemical toilet, and the chemical toilet has been ruled out for various engineering reasons. Just looking then at the site plan, the schematic in the attachments with vents, how many above ground vents would be necessary, and how close would they need to be located?
That will all be determined as part of the detailed designing process, because with the number of facilities that are toilet facilities that will be there and the patronage, so that'll be determined as part of the design process.
Okay, any further questions? So I've moved, I think Councillor Mikachuk seconded. Is there anyone against? All those in favour? That is passed unanimously. 10.8, the water fountain audit. Councillor Hamilton, I believe you had some questions. Oh, sorry, have I? No, that's right.
Okay. It's just a quick question. Personally don't like either of the fountains that have been put forward. I'm wondering why we haven't looked at the fountains that we've got in Old Perth Road, similar style.
We did actually look at that one, but that one doesn't fulfil the council resolution because it's not manufactured in Australia. So it wasn't included.
Councillor Wilson?
And do the water fountains out the front of the building that are not manufactured in Australia, do they provide a tippable water dish?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yes, it does. Yes, it's built into the ground, but it does tip. It's actually on it. It tips.
If it's built into the ground.
No, well, it has a pivotal a piece on it which allows it to tip.
Okay. Are there further questions on the water fountains? Councillor Hamilton.
Can I ask how much the ones cost for Old Perth Road? If
you require the information, we might need to defer it and give the officers a chance.
Yes, look, actually, because I actually asked the same question when the report came forward. Why haven't we included that one? Because we've got these within the town already, and look, I don't have the information before me. I'm sorry. I think it was in the. I think it's actually from memory. It was actually very close to the same price. It was within the ballpark figure, the same.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind deferring these if we
So,
could.
Councillor Hamilton, I believe you're moving a deferral motion? Yes.
I'd like to move the officer recommendation.
No, deferral comes first. Proceed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got a mover for a deferral motion. Is there a seconder? I'll second it. Anybody against? Okay, so that is Councillor Hamilton and McLennan for. Against is Councillor Wilson, Gangel, Mikachuk, Quinton and Brown. Okay, so Councillor Wilson.
I'd like to move the officer recommendation for item 10.8.
Councillor Gangel is seconded. Is there anybody against? All those in favour? is Councillor Wilson, Ganjul, Mikachuk. That's unanimous. Okay, item 10.9, Surrey Street. Councillor Quinton.
Yeah, I'd like to move a foreshadowed motion that the final concept design of Surrey Street be deferred to the October 16, 2018 special council meeting, subject to a workshop with SIA architects that addresses the concerns raised by councillors into a design including but not limited to the number and size of toilets, the need for a waiting room and entry into the clinic offices that benefits family and children in the community. The reason for my foreshadowed motion very quickly is that I don't feel like the questions that we have asked into the design have been satisfactorily settled, and I just don't think that this design is in fitting and in keeping with the needs of our community.
Okay, so we have a seconder for the motion, or is that a question?
I've got a question.
Yes, Councillor Ganjul.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know there was some discussion prior to the meeting with Councillor Quinton, and I think it may be a discussion what I'm about to ask. So just for the benefit of fellow councillors, if that was discussed, could I just ask the potential implications to, not so much the deferral because it's only a short period of time, but the cost of potentially getting the architects in again and then any redesign?
I'm thinking back about the cost for this current design. I think it was in the vicinity of about $2,000 or $3,000. $3,000, I think, to attend the workshop and to make the changes, because we've had to be some meetings with the clinic.
So that figure includes all of that consultation?
Yes, so that means if there's going to be a workshop, there would be a fee for coming to attend the workshop, then making some changes, then that would be then presented back to council. So again, so there'd be probably a similar type of fee again, I think.
So answer your question, Councillor Ganjul?
Thank you.
Yep. Further questions?
So that's a guesstimate.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Quinton has moved an alternative motion. Is there a seconder for her motion? Councillor Hamilton? Is there anybody against? Councillor Ganjul? Councillor Quinton? Sorry, Mr. Reid, what would you like to add?
Just that there's a scheduled special council meeting to deal with the convenience store that evening. You're going to be, council I think is going to be time poor on that evening, that you've got a complicated application to deal with, and then straight into the briefing sessions after. I'm wondering if it's going to be deferred, should it go back to the council, which is a week later.
I guess the thought was that there were time pressures for this in relation to the Lotteries West grant, and it was an attempt to limit the deferral time. Is that correct, Councillor Quinton?
Yes.
So through the chair, there wouldn't be enough time, I wouldn't think, to have a council have a workshop.
Oh no, she's not proposing the workshop on that night.
Okay.
She's proposing a workshop between now and then it to come back to council at
On
that
that
same
night.
meeting. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It'll be very. That would be very quick. I think between now and the 16th of October, we have a workshop. We've decided. We've fleshed it out. We're happy with the questions that benefit the community. It's simply a. We vote on it and then we move on with our lives.
Okay, so I can say that I've been in contact with the architect today, and he is actually in New South Wales at the moment. I'm not sure of his travel arrangements to be back, because he's got an office in New South Wales and an office here in Perth. So I'm not sure of his travel movements back to Western Australia.
What would you like to do, Councillor Quinton?
Then we find a time to whether he can Skype in or someone else can come and answer these questions for us, because there are still a lot of planning questions. Even tonight, Mr. Reid raised a question around occupancy rates in terms of toilets that I had never heard before. So there are still planning questions that I have. So can we just go to debate and then I'll go into more detail.
Sure. So we've got a mover with Councillor Quinton. Did you second it, Councillor Hamilton? Councillor Ganjul, you were against. So, Councillor Quinton.
Okay. So we have talked. I know. We've been on council now for nearly a year, and with everything that comes before us, there's a process. There's a process. We have a concept design and we have a detailed design, and we go out for community consultation, and then we decide that we're going to spend almost $1 million in doing up a heritage building. This detailed design that we have in front of us is 12 days old, and we've had it with us for a week. There is no opportunity for us to have asked detailed questions, and I feel like some of the questions we have asked, we as councillors haven't had the opportunity to find out all of the information that we need to spend $1 million on this building. I feel like we've been given multitudes of plans, but this is the only plan that I have seen where I see things that are not going to benefit our community, particularly the toilets, with a wall in the middle of the toilet that is just not going to be able to navigate a pram. And I have talked through some of the detailed manoeuvrings of a pram through a toilet when you need to take your baby in to go to the toilet. Those things need to be, those things, especially when Mr. Reid was telling me today that there's an occupancy issue, I want those questions answered. I want a question around this waiting area space. I just don't see that anyone would be sitting in this area waiting. It feels to me a waste of space. Also, these door entries here are a waste of space. We have said time and time again that we don't want this multi-function space, and here it is, popped up on the concept plan. So this to me feels like we are being rushed into something, despite the fact it's been a chain around our community's neck for such a long time that another 3 weeks really is not going to harm us. I want to get this right. I want to make sure that we've got it right. It's gone back and forward and back and forth. We're finally at the detailed stage and we still have questions. So every other council before us has been afforded the opportunity to take it back and change their mind and revoke this, which has put the Lottery West grant in jeopardy. We also get to do that. I'm only asking for 3 weeks. I don't think that is going to jeopardise the Lotteries West grant, because if you have a look at the activity timeline, we don't need to have the 1 Surrey Street development application submitted in accordance with council approved 2C schematic design to the town of Bassendean Estate Heritage until November. So we've got plenty of time to get this in, to ask all of the questions that we need to ask, and especially ask the community if they like this plan. It's a community space. Remember, this is not going out for community consultation. This is the last chance we have to get it right.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah. I'll keep it short and sweet. I wish to ensure that the architect and the staff are hearing the comments that we're making. So, because I feel that this may not have happened in the past, I support Councillor Quinton's requirement for a workshop, because I feel that some of the things that we brought up have not yet been actioned, and I would like to have the opportunity where we nail this down, bed it down, and get on with our lives.
Councillor Gangel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, this has been an ongoing legacy for many councils over subsequent years and potentially decades now. My concern is that it is a constant circle we're going in. Now, if changes are made, and substantial changes are made, not only is it a cost factor that comes back to the town every time, it's like a drip feed, just plugging away at architects and the like to be provided funding on these designs, so you've got them attending meetings and you've got them redoing plans, but then also what happens with the stakeholders that attended the meeting previously that granted, I don't think there was universal overwhelming support for it, but there was, my understanding, some form of agreement made to take this forward and to actually get this asset back in its somewhat original structure with the additions that council have been looking to add. So that's my concern, is where does this end? Where does this stop? If changes are made, do then the other groups that then came in have to again be consulted through this process? So that's my concern. I understand I don't have an issue with, as I said earlier, I think it was the 16th of October or the end of October, that time frame doesn't concern me so much. It's more with the cost to additionally with the architects, and then additional plan designs, and then also the impact, and if any impact, how would that be factored in to those stakeholder groups that we had the meeting, and I believe Councillor Hamilton might have said the woman was paid somewhere around $1,300 to attend the meeting. Does that then occur? An additional $1,300 has to be spent on getting the groups together again. So that's my concerns with this. Thank you.
Hold on, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I rise to support the motion moved by Councillor Quinton and seconded by Councillor Hamilton. I think I can confidently say that the answer to the 3 rhetorical questions that Councillor Gaingel just asked are no. If we are going around in circles, then I have the strong feeling that we're going in ever smaller circles, and eventually we're going to go down the plug hole and get through to the other side, whatever that looks like. There are only 3 elements to the design that I still have questions about, and I have no appetite to play exchange the messages through staff with the architect. I'd like to talk to the architect directly about those 3 questions. As Councillor Quinton said, the stick-out bit and the artificial division of a clinic waiting room, I'd like to know whether they are structural load-bearing walls or whether they can be gotten rid of. I too would like to see the toilets as functional as possible, especially for parents with more than 1 young child that they need to toilet and watch and look after at the same time. And I'd like some idea about the cost savings that could be realised by removing the non-function space. So that is why I'm supporting the motion. I think we can get it resolved.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak against the motion? For the motion? Councillor Quinton, would you like to close debate?
I just wanted to respond to Councillor Gaingel. I feel like we as this new and current council are being punished for the past sins of councillors and councils in terms of this project, and I don't think that we should have to be rushed into a decision because past councillors have made decisions that has caused this project to go in repetitive circles. That's not our fault. We deserve the right to make the right decision, and so 3 weeks is what we need. I too want to get on with my life. Everybody wants to start seeing construction at this building, but already tonight we had a member of the public raise concerns about the heritage aspects of the design. So there are, and that says to me that there are people in this community that still want to have a say in how this building looks. And can I just remind you one more time, this is not going out for community consultation. So we need to make sure that we as councillors are making an executive decision to get it right.
Okay, so all those in favour? Councillor Wilson, Mikachuk, Hamilton, Quinton, Brown and McLennan, and against Councillor Gaingel, and that is passed. Item 1010, the Alva Community Infrastructure Ideas Register. I just had a couple of questions for you, Mr. Stuart Dawkins. So first of all, thank you for your efforts in putting this all together. I just had a query about, first of all, how you selected the number of projects. There seemed to be a lot there, and I'm aware that they asked for at least 3 from each local government, but I'm not sure how many we have there, but it's more in closer to 10, I would say.
Yes.
9.
Through the chair. In essence, they looked at some plans that have been previously presented to council. One was the Bassendean Drainage Assessment Report, which was presented to council in September of 2016. Mm-hmm. That identified a number of sites within the town where there was flooding problems, and council has been proactive and actually has addressed a number of those over the years, but there's still a number that are outstanding. So the ones which hadn't been completed, I listed those. So that was simply just an elimination process for the drainage. And then there was a recent report which went to council in regards to the community facilities and ovals audit. And that, as councillors are aware, a lot of that report recommended preparing plans and allocating, a provision of say $10,000 or $20,000 to commence community engagement and to review, a facility plan or to prepare a plan for a building. So, of course, a lot of that money hasn't actually been allocated within this year's budget. So what I did was I looked at the, for example, some of the buildings which council previously has made resolutions for. For example, this site where we are now, there's council's got the corporate business plan that we've endorsed, and they're actually asking us to look at future development of this. So
are you saying that you pretty much included everything?
I tried to look at the buildings principally, which are high capital costs, and looked at those and thinking, okay, well, yes, there is a proposal to do a plan, but we want to renovate some of these buildings. So Al Faulkner Hall, this site, a number of other larger buildings. I didn't include Stan Moses.
I know that was one of the ones that I wanted to ask you about
because I don't know, because there's no. If you look at that report, there is no conclusive comments in regards to where they want to go, whether they want to demolish the building and rebuild it, whether they want to renovate the building, extend it.
It's interesting that you've got that perspective, because I interpret it as, yes, we need to look at that facility seriously.
So that's where I came from. I did actually speak to my colleagues and just ask. So all of us were kind of a little bit up in the air about what was happening with Stan Moses.
Okay. So just back to my original question about the number of items that are included. Obviously, this is for ALGA to advocate on behalf of local governments to get federal funding. My concern is if we put this list, which if someone wanted to fund us for 9 projects, then fantastic. But our priorities seem to get lost amongst the enormous list. I'm wondering if there's an advantage of putting in all of them, or whether we should be selecting just those which we would seriously like to have consideration given to.
It's entirely up to council how they'd like to do that. It's three projects is fine if you'd like to submit that.
Okay. Sorry, one further question.
Because look, the issue is that whatever 3 I'd selected, they would probably be not. You'd want to change it, so
that's
I just put the whole lot in.
That's why I wanted to seek clarification as to whether there was a reason why you put. Did you have a comment?
That was the intention originally, was to give a list for councillors to say we like these 3 as our major priority.
Okay.
But trying to guess which ones would be the major priority isn't always.
No, that's fine. That's the answer I was looking for.
And so as an officer, I would probably go for something where we've got issues associated with flooding problems for our drainage. So that would be my perspective, but I appreciate that may not necessarily be council's. But I'm trying to look at protecting infrastructure.
That's fine. I appreciate your answer. Can I also ask on point G? You've got the Al Faulkner Hall upgrade, and then you've also got included with that an integrated children family services centre. Now, as far as my memory serves me, this is the first time I've ever seen those 2 linked together.
Yeah, that was, as the report indicates, it was my suggestion. Simply because there was a sorry, just go back to the report. There's a council resolution which talks about the past proposal for a children and family services, which was in the vicinity of $8 million, I think it was, and saying that the resolution noted that was excessive capital costs to do it on that site and that project, and to revisit it and to look at alternative sites. And so, as a suggestion, and I said it's purely from the director's perspective, I thought that was a potential site. There's lots of land area. There's an opportunity to integrate it against an existing hall, but you've got a lot of space there to do something. Now that might not be an acceptable site, but it was just a suggestion.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Are there other questions, Councillor Brown?
Thank you. Thanks, Your Worship. Just a question on the officer comment, Ashfield Parade Reserve. Town will need to complete engineering specifications and undertake a procurement process prior to commencing the project at an estimated cost of $400,000. Will the project itself cost $400,000, or will the engineering specifications and procurement process cost $400,000?
No, the estimated capital cost.
It's just not clear in the wording.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Further questions? Is that a yes or a no, Councillor McEachran?
I'm just curious about the next part of the process where how we go down
Yes,
to
I am
three.
also curious about this.
Curious too.
How we do this.
Are other councillors of a mind to submit 3?
Yes, I am.
Councillor Hamilton, yes.
I'm unsure from the response from the staff. Is it defined that we should only do 3 or not?
It says at least 3.
That was what the original request was for 3 projects.
Yep.
Right, okay.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Wilson?
My question is to the officer who prepared the report, or the CEO, I guess, in the first instance. It says in the background here, they ask for a list of ideas that would, quote, strengthen the case for a Commonwealth funding program to help local government undertake vital projects. So this is not for any existing grant project, this is more...
This is a future list.
advocacy.
What I gather is this is a sort of a state of local government assets across the nation. And they get the priorities from all local governments and they go to the Commonwealth and say, look, this is what we've got that local government needs. And there may be some trends come out of. I wouldn't be surprised at all if drainage was one of the big issues that came up as well, particularly with older inner city suburbs which are now looking at getting greater densities where the existing drainage probably isn't satisfactory. So that's the sort of thing that I think Alba is looking for as part of a lobbying tool to get the feds to allocate more funds for infrastructure grants.
Okay, so given that there's an advocacy element to this, would it be advisable to include as many projects as possible so that we can demonstrate that there is a large need for this funding?
I think that's why we end up putting all of them in, but originally the request was for 3.
Okay.
At least 3, yeah.
Okay. Did you have another question, Councillor Hamilton? Councillor Brown does while you're thinking. Councillor Brown?
No.
Oh.
Say no to Jeffrey.
No.
I favour
the whole list?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if we're going to do the whole list, I would propose that we add in Stan Moses Pavilion, and I would like to separate out our Faulkner Hall upgrade and an integrated family and children's services centre, so there's 2 additional points. Does anybody else have any items they'd like to add? Councillor McEachran?
I'd just like to suggest that maybe within that list we could maybe go somewhere to identifying priorities, because I think I still fear that having a large list, how could someone determine what was really important, or what was vitally important?
So part of the application, sorry, what was that, Councillor Wilson?
I was just making clear that this isn't a grant application, this is an advocacy.
So can I propose then, in the alternative that I circulated, I would suggest adding into the officer recommendation the words that Council notes and submits to the Australian Local Government Association the following community infrastructure ideas, including photos and details of why the projects are a priority, which is actually requested in the application.
Yeah.
And then to the list of projects, so we add in Stan Moses Pavilion and the Integrated Children and Family Services Centre. Councillor Gandry?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Just wondering why within these projects, and of course I know you can only have so many, but the Ashfield Sports Club wasn't considered as a potential one if we're just throwing projects out there, and also Bassendean Oval, given it's our #1 tourist attraction.
Is it?
It is. It gets the most amount of people to the town.
Do we have an answer for Councillor Gandry?
Sorry. I don't recall. I'd have to look at. I'd have to go back and look at the report. I'm sorry.
We have submitted an application in tandem with.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
The
Yes.
Ashfield Sporting Club.
Yes.
For a sporting infrastructure grant.
Yes. Sorry.
So you're hoping that will be successful and we won't need additional funding. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. That information is included on page 55. Sorry, of the report, saying on at the 14th of August, Ashfield Soccer Club submitted a grant application for to Sport Ost. So that was for the change rooms, and that was in that report about infrastructure
Yep.
audit that talked about change rooms. So therefore, that's why that wasn't submitted as a proposal.
Councillor Gantel, did you have any thoughts on those two projects and inclusion on the list?
Well, personally, if we're just going to throw things out there, looks like we're just throwing them out there, then I would suggest just adding those.
them on.
I mean, certainly Ashfield is in a league of the football competition, and obviously Swan Districts is in the WAFL, so they're both in their chosen fields elite in their sports.
Okay, so Councillor Gantel, I've moved it. I'm happy to add those two
Thank
items
you.
onto the list if you'd second the motion. Is that, yep.
We have some
Amy, are
reason
you
to do what?
following what's going on?
So Bassendean Oval and it's called Ashfield
Sports.
Sports Club.
The advantage with Ashfield is that we actually have got plans drawn up for that and estimates, so.
Yes. So can I just clarify that I'm hearing the staff discussing something over here? Is it something that we should be hearing?
I was just asking Graham in regards to Ashfield. So it was to add the change rooms back into the list. So it's as it's an advocacy thing that doesn't matter.
Okay, Councillor Gantel.
Yeah, sorry. Just so I get an understanding. The whole facility needs a bit of a
Upgrade.
redo, not just the change rooms. I mean, I hope we're not isolating. If we're just saying that this is overall state of infrastructure in councils, it's not isolated to one particular area of a club.
Okay, so I've moved, Councillor Gantel has seconded with those additions. Is there anybody against the motion? All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Thank you, everybody.
Through the chair, can I just ask one question in regards to the separation of the integrated and children and family services proposal? The
Costings stress you out?
No. There is no. Council hasn't determined where a site is going to be, and one of the requirements is to provide photos and details.
Yeah.
And I can't provide those details because I don't know.
I think that's an acceptable reason not to provide details. I think I've had a look at the form, and they don't require much detail at all. It's very basic information, so I think everybody would be happy without.
It's quite aspirational, actually.
Okay.
I've got a survey you can use.
Sorry, what was that?
I've got a report you can use.
Okay.
Okay, 10.11. This is the Junior Cricket Club storage container proposal. Councillor Wilson, you had a question, I believe.
Yes, getting back to the specifics of grant application projects that are real. Recently, the Commonwealth offered a community sport infrastructure grant program that was open to a range of organisations, including local councils, for works, and specifically mentioned in the short list of the types of works covered by the grant, to provide toilet facilities to facilitate improved access to women and girls playing sport. I was just wondering, what are the specific obstacles to the town being able to put in an application for that grant program?
The closing of acceptances for that application round is already completed, so that would be a major obstacle this time.
I think prior to the closing was the question.
Prior to the closing, the Junior Cricket Club have indicated in their proposal that they have the funding available to achieve the outcome if the proposal as presented is acceptable to Council.
Now, can I seek some clarification, because I've had some discussions around these grants as well with both yourself and I think yourself as well, Mr. Haggett. And the information that I was given was in relation to co-funding, and was it yourself who mentioned this?
If it's a sporting club, I believe the funding body is more likely not to require a significant co-funding. If it's from a council, generally speaking, it becomes very competitive, and the council is prepared to put in the most cash gets the chocolates.
And so were there some discussions with this sporting club and others about
I don't know. The discussions with the clubs was done through the manager and the officer. The only discussions I was involved with is we had plans that were done in 2011 for building new change rooms at Ashfield, including new women's change rooms to service the needs of a growing female soccer group, and also to build an additional change rooms and a grandstand at that site.
Yep.
And we'd had the plans drawn up. The club was keen to do it then, but we didn't have the money. But we knew we had the plans and we knew we could get costings for it. We were going to submit that as the town, and at the last minute, trying to find the a current update on the costings for all of the building, etc. The principal at the soccer club is a plumber. Had all of the contacts in the building industry, and said, I can put this together very quickly. We'll put in the grant if you auspice it, and that's what we ended up doing.
I guess, though, if one of the reasons why the town hasn't put in an application is because it's more advantageous for the community group to submit it independently, then we should be looking at assisting those groups to submit or to prepare an application and submit.
We asked the clubs to come back to us with applications. In fact, we went back to them again and reminded them, and we got one with 5 minutes to go, asking us to auspice it. At Bassendean Oval by a club that hadn't actually given us any details before. We were unable to give that approval because council had not actually given any indications.
I hear what you're saying, and we'll move on now, but I guess there's a difference between asking the clubs to submit and saying we can assist you to prepare an application.
I think that was actually part of the process.
Okay.
We had a meeting with the clubs and with the local member talking about the clubs putting together applications.
Okay. Did you have further?
No, I'd like to move the officer recommendation with an amendment.
What's your amendment?
So I'm proposing to add a point 6, and the point 6 would read, officers of the town prepare a budget proposal for the 2019-20 budget to prepare costed plans for a permanent solution for the building that would meet the grant requirements of the Community Sport Infrastructure Grant Program and or the state government's Community Sport and Recreation Facilities Fund.
So can you read that out when you finished it again, Amy?
I didn't get all of it down. Okay. I got to...
That officers of the town prepare a budget proposal for 1920 to prepare costed plans for a permanent solution for the building that would meet the grant requirements of the Community Sport Infrastructure Grant Program and or the Community Sport and Recreation Facilities Fund.
CSRFF.
Yep. Full stop.
Okay, so we've got a mover. Is there a seconder? Sorry, is that a question?
Good question.
Yes.
We approved a certain amount in the budget for an overall plan for Jubilee Reserve. Are we actioning that this year?
Yes, we are indeed. That's already commenced with the planning process.
So it would assume it would include the cricket club?
Absolutely will, yes.
But would it include the budgeting as Councillor Wilson has requested?
Yes, the intent is to have the concept master plan back to council early in the new year, and that would then facilitate any budgeting processes.
Because containers in a reserve is just not the grand look I was looking for at Bassendean.
Okay, so we've got a mover of the motion with the amendment. Is there a seconder? Councillor Quinton. Is there anybody against? All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. 10.12, the waiver of fees application for the Ultimate Championships. Any questions? Councillor Hamilton?
Okay, referring back to the budget process yet again, there were a whole host of fees and charges that we put in our budget for community use, for external use, for business use. I'm curious if those fees and charges are relevant anymore, even though we only passed the budget in July.
Yes, they are.
because you adopted them as part of your budget.
Right.
Is that what you mean?
I guess what Councillor Hamilton's point is that we've had a number of requests for fee waiver, and then the recommendation from officers is that we support that, which puts councils in a very difficult position because we've got an adopted fee structure that we're trying to apply consistently across applicants, and then we're having individual groups that are coming to us to have those fees waived, which is the difficulty that councillors are experiencing at this point in time. Is that accurate, Councillor Hamilton?
That is, and I might also add that in the Assets Committee, we have spoken many times about asset renewal, about how we're in a town with all our assets are old, ageing, desperately in need of renewal. And I personally don't see how we can even do patch-up jobs if we're not even bringing in revenue of it, even a minimal amount of revenue. So I find...
Councillor Hamilton, I think it's becoming a bit of a debate at the moment.
It
I
is,
think
I'm
the staff
sorry.
have taken your point.
Yep.
Are there questions for the staff before we get to the recommendation? Okay, so we've got a recommendation to waive the hire fee. Do we have a mover for the officer recommendation? Councillor Ganjul. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mikachuk. Is there anybody against? Councillor Ganjul.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Very happy to support this recommendation. This is a great opportunity for the town. This is the state championships of the ultimate. I don't think it's called frisbee. It's called something
Flying
else.
disc.
Flying disc, otherwise known as frisbee. This is a wonderful opportunity to have people from right around the state come to the town of Bassendean. A wonderful thing for tourism, where you get people experiencing the town who ordinarily wouldn't potentially come to the town. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity to have potentially upwards of 400 people plus spectators coming to the town to actually see and participate in a state championship.
It's actually national.
Sorry?
Just to correct you, it's actually the Australian Championship.
Oh, even better, even better. Look at that! Right around Australia, people are going to be coming to Bassendean. What an absolute coup! What an absolute coup! And we want to squabble. We want to turn them away. We want to say, don't come to Bassendean. $450. Go somewhere else. Don't come and experience the town in Bassendean. I know we don't quite have the electronic car parking station up and running yet, but there's plenty of things to do and see in the town of Bassendean. So very strongly support this recommendation to council.
Electric car charging station, Councillor Ganjul.
Sorry, what did I say?
Electronic.
Oh, okay, thank you. Point noted.
Councillor Mikachuk.
Yeah, I will speak on this item. I certainly take Councillor Hamilton's point, and myself felt conflicted as you described between the tussle of, enabling something to happen and foregoing the revenue. I think for me, when I weighed up those options, it was much of what Councillor Ganjul touched on, of what it brings and what it contributes. And I think on this occasion, I feel that has merit, and for that reason, I am going to support it.
Okay. I would like to speak against this motion. It is an excellent event. I commend Ellen Shackles for her amazing work on preparing this and bringing people to the town. She's gone to enormous lengths to make sure that her event is sustainable in alignment with the council's policies. These kind of applications put us in a very difficult position, as Councillor Hamilton identified earlier. Last month we had the Bassendean for Free group put in an application, and it was a close 3-all vote, but it wasn't supported. And not because, again, that it wasn't a great initiative, but because we are elected to be fair and equitable in our decisions. We have made a decision to charge people fees for hire of our venues, including the reserves. We have put in place a price schedule. We have a reduced rate for community groups such as this, and we have a higher rate for commercial endeavours. And so this is already being charged at the lower rate that we as a council have agreed to charge these groups. What we do by considering these applications in isolation is we're creating inequity. We are saying you can have it for free, but you have to pay the fees, and I'm not happy to support that. Councillor Ganjul, you're correct that it's going to bring people to the town, but last week Ellen came and gave a deputation, and she confirmed that the event will be going ahead. whether or not we waive this fee. It is bringing people from outside the town. It is not serving our ratepayers. Our ratepayers are being charged to use these reserves. So I, for one, cannot support waiving the fees for one group if we're not going to be waiving it for all other groups. It's not fair, and I don't think that we can say that we are treating our community equitably if we're picking and choosing who we are going to waive the fees for and who we are not. So I'm not going to be supporting the officer recommendation, although I think it's a wonderful initiative and I wish them well for this event. Any more speakers? Okay, Councillor Ganjel.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, look, I do note with interest that you did use the terminology pick and choose. Well, we picked and choose tonight on West Road with a fence, what we decided to support within a planning application. We pick and choose all the time in various issues that come to us, and we look at the merits of each case. Certainly the merits on this case is a local resident has organised this tournament. Congratulations to the resident for doing that. This is a national championships. This is people from right across Australia that's helping out. This is an organisation which, as the deputation advised last week, does run at a deficit. They do it for the love of the sport, not because it creates great income. We should encourage, obviously, physical activity. I do understand what you say about trying to be consistent in these matters, but as we pick and choose other matters that we deem considerable with the information, I believe this is one that very much we can pick and choose, and we can choose to support a local resident that's organised a national tournament to be held in our town, on our reserve, bringing people from right around Australia. That would also support, no doubt, local businesses as people flow through the town as well. So certainly for $450, more than happy on this instance to choose this organisation and waive the fee. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Ganjel and Brown. All those against? Councillor Wilson, Mikachuk, Hamilton, Quinton and McLennan. So that is lost. Okay, 10:13. Councillor Hamilton.
Through the chair, I have a question for the staff. I note in the valuation matrix that there's only 7% difference between two suppliers, yet the staff have recommended the more expensive of the two. Can I ask why?
I'm just trying to pull that up on. I'm just trying to pull that up on my on the website on my computer at the moment. But they take into consideration more than just the price. They look at they look at a number of other components that the applicant will submit in their proposal. So if you'd like, mind just giving me one moment while I have a look at the.
If I can just clarify for the officer, I do understand that there's three criteria that are taken in when you're creating this matrix, but my observation is that two of these suppliers are very close with only 7% difference in the matrix total. So yet the variation in the price is quite significant. So I'm kind of curious as to why it just seems interesting, and I wanted to know what was the thinking behind that.
Can I make a comment in between? Is it correct that this asset infrastructure management was previously appointed and performed well?
Yes.
So I think that maybe
they are very familiar with the town's program, and in fact have. I'm not saying the other organisation couldn't have. I'm saying that the one that we have used and has been selected has taken us from a very low level of asset management to a very high level of asset management in a fairly short time and in a very professional manner. And I wasn't involved in the assessment process, by the way. That's only my observation as a CEO, watching this process take place over the last 9 years.
Madam Mayor, while Simon's doing that, I was one of the panel members. The price isn't the only aspect, you're aware of that. There are 3 other officers as well, and we based it on experience, knowledge and risk, and the risk was of a lesser risk to the town by choosing this company than the other one.
Thank you. So out of curiosity, how long have we been using, because you're obviously recommending the same company that we have been using, is that correct?
It is.
So how long have we been using that existing company?
2015.
Okay.
We had to go to tender because of the amount of money. But as I say, the 3 officers involved were not here in 2015, and so we've chosen it based on the 3 areas, not just price.
Does that satisfy you, Councillor Hamilton? Okay. So we've got an officer recommendation. Do we have a mover? Councillor Mikachuk. Seconder? Councillor Quinton. Anybody against? All those in favour? Is that you, Councillor Hamilton?
I'm against it.
Okay, so do you want to debate or can we
No,
just...
I don't.
Okay, so it's Councillor Wilson, Ganjul, Mikachuk, Quinton, Brown and McLennan for, and Councillor Hamilton against. So that is passed. Okay, 10:14, the Merrick Crescent Playground Supply and Installation. Are there questions? Mr Haggett, maybe you can answer my question. We discussed at the briefings that the company that we were looking to appoint couldn't meet the time frame originally specified, and I think you indicated that it would be completed in a 16-week time frame. Is there anything that we have or could put in place to ensure compliance with that time frame?
Yes, we're actually recommending that the timeframes as proposed by the applicant be agreed to by the town. So if we require them to maintain their own timeframes or the timeframes that they've indicated in their application, then that should achieve the same result.
Okay, and what's the consequence if they don't?
There would be penalties applied to them.
Sorry, what was that, Mr Cosrell?
Oh, sorry. There is a daily penalty.
Okay, thank you.
Conditions of contract.
Other questions? Councillor Wilson?
So assuming that the officer recommendation is supported and that the proponent would meet all of the time frames indicated without penalty, when would the playground be completed?
We would have a launch early in the new year.
After my daughter's birthday, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately after Christmas.
Are we saying early as in early in January or early as in March or April?
Can we split the difference, say February?
Okay, do we have a mover for the officer recommendation? Councillor Mikachuk, seconder. Councillor Quinton, anybody against? All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Item 10:15, the Your Move project financial contribution. I had a query about point 1, which refers to allocating funds from our surplus. We significantly reduced our surplus.
Yes, indeed. I think it sits at about $22,000 at the moment. So, because this is a request for unallocated funds, the options are to hold it over until the budget review in February, or to reduce the anticipated surplus by the equivalent.
And can you remind me again what the rollout date for this program is proposed to be?
Commencing January.
2019.
So if we were to wait until the budget review at the end of February, it would mean that this couldn't be implemented until probably March at the earliest, which would be 3 months after the commencement date. Is that correct?
That's correct, but there would also be lead times in terms of design and acquisition of the wayfinding signs and the bike signs. That would mean it would be later in the program again. These 2 projects are seen as lead projects by Department of Transport and highly visible, and therefore ones that they would want to roll out early in the project.
I guess my question's related to why we didn't budget for this instead of leaving this particular item for now. I've also got a question about point 2, which is about the fix-it stations. In terms of if council's to support this, how is the location of these going to be determined?
Well, that's something that we'd be bringing back to council.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Hamilton, and then your next Councillor Mikachuk.
I recall in the workshop or the presentation that we had about this that the presenter indicated that we could modify the volume of signage that's in point 1, and therefore that would obviously lead to a reduced amount of co-contribution from us. So has there been any consideration of doing that to reduce the amount that we contribute?
Yes, I did discuss it with the Department of Transport, and their indication is that they've gone with a modest program as it is. They're seeking a 1/3 contribution from the town to the project.
Okay, because that signage was 2-part. It was, sorry, I can't remember the 2 parts, but obviously what I'm thinking is that we go with the primary part and leave the other off, which would reduce the costs.
So there's the 2 signage projects. One is the wayfinding signs around town, and they're proposing that the 150 signs that they would put around town would equate to $13,500, I believe, of which they're allocating $9,000 from their own sources, and so seeking the match or the balance from the town of 4.5 or so. And the other is for the bike safety signs on the PSP and other bike lanes, bike paths, of about 50 signs at $4,500, of which they're seeking a contribution of $1,500.
So what I'm thinking is if we drop the bike component, we're reducing the monetary component from because our surplus is quite small. I'm thinking that we need to be very careful in what we spend. So I would suggest that potentially we could drop the bike and retain the other.
So one more question, then we'll move on to Councillor Mikachuk. Councillor Mikachuk?
Yeah, just a couple of questions regarding points 4 and 5. So maybe the first one would be just about clarity around the budget review process. So although this says refers for consideration, then there's still the process in February where it's adopted or not, or right. It does say that, but yeah. And then there were several kind of, I guess, suggestions or options about how staff could use the bikes and how the D-locks would be subsidised. Should council vote to include these items, would that be dealt with administratively, like in that regard? And it is a subsidy, is that correct?
Yes, it is, yeah, certainly. D-locks, I've got to say, is something that hasn't been trialled in any of the previous Your Move projects. Yep. So they would see this as a new initiative, one that they thought was a great proposal from council at the workshop, and if supported, they would certainly support that. But the intention is that it would be a 50% subsidy for residents who would like to acquire a D-lock. In terms of the e-bikes and how that's undertaken, that would be part of the budget review process, so there would be more detail associated with that.
Fantastic. And in regards to the D-locks, the proposed or the kind of estimate of cost, is that a final amount? Were there a few prices looked at, or?
I've got to say I am reliant on the officer in the Department of Transport who gave that number.
Oh, okay, yep. I've seen them for different amounts, but yeah. Yep, thank you.
Councillor Hamilton?
I note in the body of the report on page 74 that the Your Move project includes targeted small-scale infrastructure investments that provide an enabling environment for travel change and a legacy for this community, blah, blah, blah. So items such as bus modules, bike racks, bike fix-it stations and wayfaring signage. I do recall during that workshop asking the presenter about the potential for bike lock-up cages in certain areas of the town, and I don't see anything in this report that comes back to us about that. Now, given that there's obviously an indication that they will engage in small infrastructure projects, is there any sort of feedback from them on that?
Other than the bike lock-ups are available at the train stations, beyond the train stations, no, there hasn't been much discussion on that.
Oh, sorry. I thought you'd finished. Okay. So, Councillor Hamilton, I recently had some contact with Michelle Pryor, the Department of Transport lady who's working on the green route through Success Hill, and I mentioned to her your suggestion about having a lock-up cage at Success Hill Station, and the two teams, sort of Your Move and the PSP green route teams, are working in the same buildings. She was going to have some discussions with the Your Move team and follow up on your suggestion. I haven't heard anything further, but that message has been conveyed.
It's more or less to engage with the staff and tell them that, you know, these conversations are things that are part and parcel of this Your Move project.
Okay, so are there any further questions, Councillor?
No questions.
So you're moving the officer recommendation?
I am.
Okay, is there a seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor Wilson, anybody against? All those in favour? Passed unanimously. 10.16, review of the donations policy. Councillor Hamilton, you flagged with me prior to the meeting that you wanted to defer this. Is that still the case?
Yes, because well, there's a few anomalies in here. We seem to be increasing the amount that we can donate from the markets up to $15,000 for approved minor capital works projects in public accessible sites.
Okay, Councillor Hamilton, that's okay. So you've moved to defer it. Is there a second to defer the motion? Councillor Wilson, anybody against? All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Sorry to cut you off, Councillor Hamilton.
No, that's fine. I was waffling.
Okay, 10.17, Access and Inclusion Committee. I just had a query. In the report, it said that both of the nominations were from organisations. I thought one of the applicants was an individual who happened to work for DSC but didn't live in the town. Do they work in our area or?
So the two groups were one from Tadwell and one from Lord Street Facility.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, do we have a mover for the officer recommendation? Councillor Quinton, seconder, Councillor Hamilton. Anyone against? All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Moving on to item 10.20, which is the Economic Development Committee meeting. Are there any questions for the staff? So I had circulated I guess it's a foreshadowed motion or an alternative motion after having some conversations with our Economic Development Officer and also Mr Haggart. So the first point in the committee recommendation relates to a partnership with Connecting Bassendean, which deputation was apparently given at this committee meeting and there was support from the committee. However, the committee recommendation currently says supporting a potential partnership, and William Barry has since explored that, and the partnership option is not possible for various reasons. Mainly it's very complicated. So that would be problematic, and also the time frame would be problematic. So I am proposing that instead of point 1, that we word it as saying that we will trial supporting the next edition of Connecting Bassendean by A, contributing up to a maximum of $600 towards the distribution costs, and B, contributing up to a maximum of $1,000 for content including the community group directory, and requests that the committee evaluates the effectiveness of the trial initiative and reports back to council with future recommendations. Now, before I move on to my other point, Mr Haggart, you didn't have a chance to review this before I gave it to council. Are there any problems that you see with that proposal?
No, and I waved it under Mr Barry's nose as well, and he seemed reasonably comfortable with it as well.
Okay. And in terms of procurement, all of those policies, it's compliant?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
And then there's point 2 as is written, and then I was proposing to add a point 3, which is that requests that officers, in conjunction with the Economic Development Committee, organise a strategic meeting with key business owners in Old Perth Road as soon as practicable. Councillor Gangel.
Yes, thank you. I would like to make some changes to point 3.
Yes.
Requests officers in conjunction with the Economic Development Committee organise a strategic meeting. Fine with that, but I'd like to change with
yes.
Property owners of commercial and retail premises.
So with property owners.
Property owners of commercial and retail premises.
Yep.
As well as business owners.
Yep.
And to seek interest from the property owners in providing empty premises for the purposes of art displays and pop-up stores, and provides a report back to council.
So Councillor Gangel, I have no problems with your proposal, except that it then limits the focus of the meeting to just those points, and there may be other.
No. We just seek from the property owners that interest.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah,
all right.
Yeah. So that's why I also included business owners as well as the property owners. But I just wanted to just put that down there, that we should seek the interest of utilising the empty spaces available.
Okay. Thank you. Amy, would you mind? I'm happy to accept that amendment. I'm assuming that you're seconding the motion then, if that's included. Would you mind just reading that out, Amy?
Just the point 3.
That's fine, yep, if everyone's happy with that.
Request that officers, in conjunction with the Economic Development Committee, organise a strategic meeting with property owners of commercial and retail premises, as well as business owners, to seek interest from the property owners in providing empty premises for the purposes of art displays and pop-up stores, and provide a report back to council.
Okay, I think we're going to add. Thank you, Amy. No, that's accurate. But Councillor Gangel understands my point now.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I see the end part. So it needs to stop at. So invites business owners. So the full stop there, and then the additional part about seeking interest needs to be a point 4.
Thanks, Mr. Cosrell. So it's as you've written it up until business owners, and then full stop, and point 4.
Point 4 would be seek interest from property owners. That part there. Interest from property owners to providing empty premises for the purposes of art displays and pop-up stores. That part there needs to be a point 4, Amy.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, you happy, Amy?
Yes. And then did you want a point 5 that a report be provided back to council?
Thank you.
Why not? Yes, Mr. Cosrell.
Sorry, just with the trials supporting the cost is $1,600. There's just a small clause of the expenditure be authorised in accordance with section 6.0 of the government. It has to be by an absolute majority.
Thank you.
Because you're amending the budget.
I have a question.
Yes.
Will we be receiving any sponsorship type advertising in the Connecting Bassendean for our funds?
So the proposal that they've put forward, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Gangel and Councillor Brown, who are on this committee, is that we would have our logo included throughout the publication, but there would be a community directory and up to 4 full pages for promotion of town events or activities.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've moved. Councillor Gangel has seconded. Is there anybody against? All those in favour? Passed unanimously. 1022, accounts for payment. Councillor Hamilton, you wanted this brought out of en bloc?
Yes. I'll try and make this as quick as possible. I note in some of the payments, attachment 15, page 8, bottom of the page, we've got a spend of almost $75,000 on 1 year's licence for software. Synergy Soft, 75,000. It's breathtaking.
That relates to 100 licences for our mainframe, basically our finance, planning, building, customer service, engineering.
Records.
Records.
It's everything.
Yeah, it's not It's a big one.
Okay.
It's our main service. It's our main.
How much do we spend on IT license, software licenses per year? It seems to be, there's another one for 16,000 earlier on somewhere else in the things, but moving on, you can take that on notice.
Yeah,
it's a rhetorical question really.
It's one of the cheapest actually for local government, Synergy Soft. The others are considerably more expensive, Civic and Finance One are the other major ones.
That's fine. Okay, page 1, third way down, we've got a payment to the Bassendean Tennis Club for court maintenance, a sum of $2,291.30, and then we have that same payment again on another page, and I haven't written down the page number. It's exactly the same amount, so I'm wondering if that's a duplication or not. That's page 4.
So that's a
page 1 and page 4. We've got the same amount.
Yep. So that's a monthly instalment. So it may well be we paid 2 months in the one. So last month and this month in this month.
Okay. So we're paying the Bassendean Tennis Club over $2,000 for maintenance on the courts.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. Now, I also noticed kids' sports vouchers, which love the fact that we're giving out vouchers, but we only gave one voucher out
we're not
for
giving
a local club.
Anymore.
Everything else is for outside the town. Now, I think part of the reason for doing kids' sports, apart from the fact we're trying to get kids from disadvantaged backgrounds into sports,
Councillor Hamilton, we're not giving out the kids' sports vouchers anymore. Is that correct, Mr. Haggett? It's gone back to the state government, or
right? Great, because we gave them all out outside the town.
Did you hear what Mr. Haggett said? He said they were our local kids.
I know, but we're supposed to be supporting our local sports groups.
I'm just
as
passing
well.
on the message, Councillor Hamilton.
Okay. We also look like we're paying the insurance for Historical Society, which surprises me because I don't know that we pay the insurance for other groups in the town.
We have to insure our assets and we on charge them.
Yes, in fact, we've been paying the Historical Society's public liability insurance because they open up the cottage for us, and so we've agreed to meet their annual premium.
Right. So we're going to extend that service to every other club in the town?
Councillor Hamilton.
Sorry. Okay. Okay. Ashfield Flats, I noticed, now I'm rather confused, so perhaps someone can explain this to me. We don't manage that land, but we paid $25,000 for mosquito control. We actually paid that to the Bayswater Council. So,
that's an agreement we've had for the last 2 years where Bayswater have been treating Ashfield Flats under a contract with the town for mosquito breeding.
I guess Councillor Hamilton's question though was around the management of the flats as well.
We don't manage that land, so I'm curious about it.
Yeah, I suppose one thing I suppose we need to look at is we don't do it currently, whether or not we can recoup those costs from the Western Australian Planning Commission. But the problem,
we do manage part. Would you manage part of that land?
I can answer a little bit more on that. Under the past Health Act, the local government is responsible for managing mosquitoes. With the current new Act, there may be a possibility, but it's still yet to be determined at this stage whether we can recoup those costs.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Have you exhausted your questions?
I could go on, but I'll leave it.
Okay. So do we have a mover then for the officer recommendation? Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Quinton. All those in favour? It's passed unanimously. The calendar, 10.25. Can I just make some amendments? If I'm going to be on leave, can you please put Councillor Brown for the marketing group meeting instead of myself?
You don't need to come to the sustainability.
No, I'm a deputy, right?
Yeah, I'm still going to come to that because I've got some things to add. So Councillor Mikachuk doesn't need to be on the sustainability committee. On the economic development, I'm listed, but I'm not the representative on that committee, so can my name please be removed? Otherwise, I'm happy with it. Does everybody else?
So the 10th doesn't need to be there, does it?
Pardon?
Sorry. I have sent an email to Mr. Costarello previously because you changed the date for the audit and governance from the 10th of October to December, but it's still showing here as November.
No, no, that is two. There's one on 7th of November, one on the 5th of December.
Which is why I sent the email previously, was told it was
So
just
you were
one.
just saying.
Okay, no, that's
the month
fine.
of December.
That's fine.
Okay,
Can I just clarify then, is there a meeting in November and December?
Yes.
Audit committee, do you mean?
Yeah.
So we won't have that calendar yet, though.
Okay. I'm just wondering if maybe Councillor Hamilton's presiding member wanted to change the date to have me there, or Councillor Brown can attend in my absence.
What date was it?
Okay, so
I'll
we
have
might
a
need
look.
to, because we can't make changes here without looking at what other workshops and things like that are scheduled. So maybe we can adopt the calendar, and then if there's a problem, we can address it after the meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will move the motion. If we've got a seconder, Councillor Mikachuk. Anybody against? All those in favour? Passed unanimously. 10.26, implementation of council resolutions. I would like to just remove a couple. So the second one listed, REC 17/57459, which is in relation to the workshop on standing orders. So we have postponed that until after the new CEO starts. So I'd like to keep that on the record. I had a question about the bottom one on page 102, which relates to the developer contribution policy. Following the JDAP decision last Friday, I was just wanting a reminder of when we're looking at having our contribution policy commenced and put in place. Mr. Reid?
There's no real time for it at the moment. This is something that Mr. Dowland is looking at doing under his strategic planning framework, and he's away for about the next fortnight.
Okay, maybe we can raise it
I
with him when he
understand
gets.
it's a higher priority now.
Yeah. And there was one other I wanted to have removed. It's the third one from the bottom, ROC 18/62198, which refers to letters that will be sent in October. I believe we should keep that until it's been completed. Councillor Hamilton?
Can I also go back to the first page, third from the top? I've had a message from the resident who said he has not received correspondence on that. So,
about the red letterbox listing?
Yes, he hasn't received any correspondence, and yet it says here that correspondence has been sent.
Okay, so can we follow up on that tomorrow?
I think actually you might have to make a phone call because the thing is on Friday apparently.
Someone? Yep. Okay, so with those two removed, I'll move the motion. Yeah, have you got two?
I have three, so that one's not being removed. Okay.
Seconder, Councillor Mikachuk. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. 11.1 notice of motion. So this is the one from me in regards to food organics and garden organics. Just by way of background, we've sent two, we've corresponded with the EMRC on 2 occasions this year about our desire to pursue FOGO in alignment with the introduction of the third bin. This notice of motion comes from the staff requesting some specific direction from council about to communicate with the MRC about updating their licence to allow us to windrow the FOGO. So it's not really introducing anything new, it is just solidifying what we've already previously agreed to, so the staff have got clear direction about what council's position is on this. Does anyone have any questions?
I second your motion.
Sure. Anybody against the motion? All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Councillor Ganjel.
Oh, thank you very much. My time. Point 12, Your Worship.
Yes.
Announcements for the notice of the next meeting. Right. So, Amy, I shall speak very slow. Right. Okay. That council receives a report on the cost of installing below ground bollards on intersections on Old Perth Road from Guildford Road to James Street. Second one.
Can we vote on that now?
That council receives a report on the cost of installing festoon lighting within the grassed area out the front of the council chambers. And my final one, that the town engages with Martin Jane Sculptures to seek costings of commissioning street art and furniture to be installed around the town centre, and council receives a report back with costings for consideration in future budgets.
Thank you, Councillor Gangel. How are you going there, Amy? Okay, so they're all on notice for next month's meeting. So now we're moving on to item 13, confidential business. So can I have a mover to go behind closed doors? Councillor Mikachuk, seconded Councillor Brown. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously.